Science fiction has a reputation for predicting the future. Sometimes it gets things amazingly right. Looker anticipated digital identities, synthetic media, and deepfakes. War games saw hacking and cybersecurity long before they became part of everyday life. Max Headroom imagined digital celebrities, influencer culture, and a world dominated by media. But not every prediction becomes reality, at least not immediately. Sometimes science fiction predicts a future that never arrives, or perhaps more accurately, a future that hasn't arrived yet. Tonight, we're looking at 10 science fiction movies that imagine remarkable technologies and extraordinary futures that remain just beyond our reach. Some may never happen, others may simply be running late. The future is full of surprises, and science fiction has always been willing to wait. When audiences watched Lawnmower Man, they were introduced to a future where virtual reality wasn't simply entertainment, it was evolution. The movie imagined that immersive virtual reality experiences could dramatically increase intelligence, unlock hidden potential, and eventually allow a human consciousness to transcend physical reality. The result was a digital superhuman, a god born from technology. More than 30 years later, virtual reality certainly exists. We have MetaQuest, PlayStation VR, flight simulators, virtual workspaces, immersive games. What we don't have are super intelligent beings ascending into cyberspace. At least not yet. Still, the movie's core idea that technology could fundamentally alter human consciousness remains an active area of discussion today. The prediction wasn't necessarily wrong, it may have simply been optimistic. William Gibson's Johnny Mnemonic imagined a future where information had become so valuable that people carried digital files inside their brains. Johnny works as a courier, physically transporting information through implanted memory storage. At the time, this felt futuristic. Today it feels strangely backwards. Modern society moved toward cloud storage, smartphones, streaming services, wireless communication. Rather than increasing human storage capacity, we outsourced storage to machines. Yet the underlying prediction was remarkably accurate. Information became the world's most valuable resource. The method was wrong, the direction was right. One of the most fascinating films on this list is Brainstorm. The movie imagines a machine capable of recording human experiences, thoughts, memories, sensations, even dreams. Those experiences can then be replayed by someone else. Imagine experiencing another person's memories exactly as they lived them. Today that still sounds impossible, yet advances in neuroscience and brain-computer interfaces suggest the basic concept isn't entirely fantasy. We're nowhere near recording complete memories, but we're learning more about how thoughts and neural activity work every year. Of all the technologies on this list, Brainstorm may be one of the most likely to eventually become reality. One thing many of these movies have in common is a belief that human consciousness can eventually be separated from the body. We see variations of the idea in Brainstorm, Freejack, Johnny Mnemonic, Surrogates. The details differ, but the underlying concept remains the same. At some point, humanity may discover a way to preserve, transfer, record, or duplicate the mind itself. What's fascinating is that scientists and futurists still debate these possibilities today. Could we eventually upload human consciousness into a machine? Could memories be preserved digitally? Could personalities survive independently from the biological brain? We don't have answers yet. But the fact that these questions continue to be discussed decades later suggests those science fiction writers may have identified something deeply human. Our desire to live longer, to remember more, to preserve who we are. The future imagined by these films hasn't happened yet, but the questions they asked are still very much alive. Science fiction has always been obsessed with immortality. Freejack imagines a future where wealthy individuals escape death by transferring their consciousness into younger bodies. The rich become effectively immortal. Death becomes optional, at least for those who can afford it. Reality has proven less cooperative. Instead of body swapping, we've focused on medical advances, longevity research, anti-aging therapies, improved healthcare. Humanity remains fascinated by defeating death. We simply haven't discovered a way to hijack someone else's body. Yet. At first glance, Cherry 2000 seems easy to dismiss. The film follows a man desperately searching for a replacement robot companion after his original model is destroyed. It sounds ridiculous until you look around today. We now have AI companions, digital relationships, conversational AI systems, virtual personalities. Suddenly the premise doesn't seem quite as impossible. The movie predicted that some people would seek companionship from artificial beings. That possibility no longer feels like science fiction. Perhaps Cherry 2000 wasn't wrong. Perhaps it was early. Surrogates imagined a world where human beings stay safely at home while robotic avatars interact with society on their behalf. People work remotely, socialize remotely, live remotely. Sound familiar? Well, we haven't embraced robotic substitute bodies. We have embraced remote work, video conferencing, online shopping, virtual education, digital communities. The future outlined by Surrogates looks surprisingly close in spirit, even if the technology took a different form. The prediction continues to evolve. Every year technology makes remote participation easier. Who knows what the next 20 years may bring? One thing that surprised many people in recent years was just how quickly society adapted to remote interaction. For decades, science fiction predicted futures where people would work, communicate, learn, and shop from home. Then something unexpected happened. We actually started doing it. Not through robotic bodies as depicted in Surrogates, but through video conferences, remote work, virtual classrooms, online shopping, digital communities. What once seemed futuristic became routine. That's an important reminder. Sometimes science fiction gets the destination right while getting the technology completely wrong. The experience people imagined eventually arrived, just through a different path. Demolition Man deserves special mention because it got some things right. Video calls? Correct. Touchless interactions? Correct. Automated services? Correct. Yet its broader vision of society remains unrealized. The movie imagined crime-free cities, strict social control, highly regulated behavior, limited physical interaction. Technology advanced, human nature remains stubbornly human. Perhaps the biggest lesson of Demolition Man is that predicting gadgets is easier than predicting people. Now we enter truly speculative territory. Millennium imagines future humans traveling through time to rescue airline passengers moments before disaster strikes. The rescued individuals become part of humanity's future survival plan. It's an imaginative concept. Unfortunately, it requires practical time travel, stable timelines, future civilizations capable of altering history. 3 things we haven't quite figured out. While time travel remains one of science fiction's favorite ideas, reality continues to resist cooperation. Some predictions are ambitious, others are just wonderfully bizarre. Solarbabies imagined a post-apocalyptic future where roller skating becomes a primary mode of transportation and social activity. Let's take a moment to appreciate that. Human civilization collapsed, and our solution was roller skates. Needless to say, reality took a different path. Still, the movie remains charming because of its optimism. Few science fiction films have ever believed more strongly in the future potential of roller sports. Artificial intelligence appears constantly in science fiction. Virtuosity imagined an AI becoming physically embodied and interacting directly with humanity. Reality developed differently. The AI revolution arrived through search engines, recommendation systems, generative AI, large language models. The machines didn't become walking supervillains. Instead, they became digital assistants. The movie expected robots, we got software. The future arrived in a much less dramatic form. One thing I've learned from revisiting these films is that science fiction rarely predicts exact technologies. What it predicts are possibilities, concerns, dreams, fears. Writers look at the world around them and ask what happens next. Sometimes they guess correctly, sometimes they don't. And occasionally they predict something that arrives in a completely different form. That's why judging old science fiction can be tricky. The destination may be correct even when the route is wildly inaccurate. Predicting technology sounds easy until you try it. Consider what people in the 1980s expected. Many imagined flying cars, moon colonies, personal robots, nuclear-powered transportation, fully immersive virtual worlds. What they rarely imagined was search engines, smartphones, social media, streaming services, cloud computing. Human beings tend to predict dramatic change. Instead, the most transformative technologies are often the ones that quietly become ordinary. No one stood in a theater watching Johnny Mnemonic and thought the real revolution will be a small device in everyone's pocket. Yet that's exactly what happened. What's especially interesting is what these movies missed. Very few science fiction films predicted smartphones, social media, streaming services, online shopping, search engines, influencer culture. The actual future often turns out stranger than the imagined one. No one expected billions of people carrying powerful computers in their pockets. No one expected internet influencers to become celebrities. No one predicted that artificial intelligence might help people write articles, generate images, or create videos. Reality has a way of surprising even the best most futurists. Perhaps calling these movies wrong isn't fair. Many of the ideas they explored are still being pursued today. Researchers continue investigating brain-computer interfaces, artificial intelligence, digital consciousness, human-machine interaction, longevity science. The future remains unfinished. Some of these predictions may never happen, others might become reality tomorrow. That's what makes science fiction so fascinating. Its best ideas never truly expire. They simply wait. Perhaps the biggest lesson from these movies is that we shouldn't be too quick to dismiss them. If you had shown modern artificial intelligence to audiences in 1983, they would have assumed it was impossible. If you had demonstrated today's smartphones, cloud computing, social media platforms, and video conferencing systems, many people would have thought they belonged in a science fiction film. The future has a habit of arriving slowly, then suddenly, which means some of the technologies we've discussed tonight may still be waiting for their moment. Maybe Brainstorm is waiting, maybe Surrogates is waiting, maybe Cherry 2000 is waiting, or maybe the future has something completely different in mind. That's what makes revisiting these films so much fun, not because they tell us what tomorrow will look like, because they remind us how difficult tomorrow is to imagine. The future is difficult to predict. If history has taught us anything, it's that tomorrow rarely arrives the way we expect. Sometimes science fiction sees the future clearly, sometimes it misses completely. And sometimes it creates visions of tomorrow that are still waiting for their chance to happen. That's what makes these movies worth revisiting. Not because they were accurate, not because they were wrong, but because they remind us how endlessly fascinating the future can be. So which of these predictions do you think still has a chance of becoming reality? Which ones are impossible? And what science fiction movie do you think was simply too early? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this look at the futures we're still waiting for, please like, subscribe, and join me next time as we continue exploring the movies, television shows, and ideas that imagine tomorrow long before it arrived. Until next time, the future may just be running late.